Hey folks, this is Brian. Good morning. We got to play RQG last night, continuing on my Runequest Roleplaying and Glorantha campaign number 2. And we're continuing with the Waters Rising scenario involving some sort of we'd call it a cult. And in fact, it is a cult because that's how things are done in Runequest. Where the players are in the edge of upland marsh, just outside of the town of Marsh Edge, where the scenario really began. And so they've been trying to investigate what's going on, what's causing these people to change. They figured out there's something behind it, and they were almost captured at one point, or at least some of them. But they worked through all that, and they headed down the river. They got to the marsh, and they found this sunken fortification. And there was part of a tower sticking out of a hill, and there was a bulwark helping to keep water out. In fact, I could hear water splashing somewhere in the distance. And they found the tower goes down and up, but the upper part of the tower is still broken up and that kind of thing. So they went wandering around. They ended up climbing down one side and going in through a side door. There are actually 2 side doors in the inner courtyard area that was partially collapsed mud dirt stuff, and on both north and south sides, and then there's water in the center, and there's still that keep tower. But they got inside, went around, and they ran into the barracks rooms of some of the guards and commenced to kill them. They have at this point gone, there's like 3 or 4 guard rooms there, barracks rooms kind of stuff. And there's one they haven't checked out yet. But all the other rooms either had guards in them, guards coming out. Guards in them or guards coming out. And in the previous videos, you'll see that, coming up and down, up and down, up and down, like you feel it should. It's dangerous. You should not necessarily fight all the time in RuneQuest because it is so easy to get maimed or killed. And to that, I have also been house ruling some modifications to things to essentially make it more lethal. And because of the prominent position that magic has in healing. Everybody's initiative has got access to the common rune spells, and there's heal wounds, cure wounds, no, heal wounds. Yeah, the heal wounds spell, which I do pump magic points into it, and you can heal that many points. In fact, the female dark troll ended up doing that. She pumped half of her magic points into her cure wounds after she was, made conscious again, and got her up. So the party in general is in this back room. They just finished killing off the last guard guy, and Voskandor and Arestra, 2 party heavy fighters, although Angro is technically a heavy fighter too, have moved, snuck down the hallway in their heavy mail and plate, heavy scale and plate. Just snoop around at the end to see what's going on. They're listening. They don't hear anything. Voskandor peeps around the edge of the hallway to see what's down the hallway, and there are 3 guys there. Not surprised, and the first guy attacks because he's the only one within range. And then Arestra moves up. The other guys move up, so there's this conglomeration in the middle. Now I use hexes. In this particular set of the hexes, there's a hex in the center and then 2 half hexes on either side because the hallway itself is 2 hexes wide. So, technically you should have 2 people across, but in this particular place you could technically have 3. And so there's 3 guys, right? So I stuffed them in there. I do have a house rule on fighting from half hexes. There's a modifier. I don't remember now. It was like -10 or maybe half skill or something. You know, because you're tied up, right? So we got these three, and then we got Restra and Voskandor. And Voskandor throws out his Berserker Rage spell, which we've seen in action before, and can be, well, it turns him into a monster, right? Increases his attack percentage by half again, increases his con by half again, hit points go up, all kinds of stuff happens, right? And he starts to wail on this guy. In fact, his percentage now is over 100, and so he's most of the time he's doing split attacks. I think his first attack was just a single attack, and then later on in the fight, he did go back to a single attack. Most of the time he's doing double attacks at strike rank 5 and strike rank 10 with the Great Axe. And he does some beating down on this guy. There's a guy with a battle axe and two guys with sword and shield. Well, they all got shields. But the guy with the battle axe has got a large shield. And the two have medium. And lots of fighting going on. Most of the time, the guy in the middle is attacking Voskandor, but there's a couple times we switches to a Restra because she's hitting at him, ignoring the guy on the far left or far right. And there's a whole bunch of specials thrown, a couple of criticals. There is and live plays in the description, but I gotta warn you, there is a lot of sidebar talking going on during this session about extraneous things, right? Anyway, this guy that Voskandor's pounding on continues to survive. He does get hit with does a regular parry, gets a special attack, and there's a discussion on this double dipping thing I talked last time, where the weapon does all the damage over the hit points of the shield to the shield, and all that damage goes through to the person. And a quick discussion on the fact that this is double dipping. I don't really like it. What you do, and the player came up with the idea of all that goes to the shield, and if there's any excess over the shield's armor points, bring the shield down to 0, then that goes through. And that makes a lot of sense, but it does, having subside over it, it does limit the effects of a special attack against a person. Because in a normal attack, yeah, shield is down by 1, but the rest goes through. In this, it all goes to the shield. Nothing gets through necessarily, if it depends on how much damage you do, but essentially you could just mangle the shield, not doing damage to the guy. And so I'm starting to think maybe split it half and half. Half goes to the shield, half goes through, that kind of thing. But maybe we'll play test that a bit. Well, play test. I'll map it out. I'll pen and paper it with the math and see how I feel about it after a while. Well, anyway, so there was some of that discussion going on as we did, ended up cleaving the guy's shield, and a bunch went through. But this guy's armored up. Plus, they've got some magic going. And so at one point, he loses a leg, goes down. He's still attacking from the ground. It took a couple more rounds to actually take the guy out. But they do. He's dead. The other two are fighting. The other two both have shimmer spells on, so they're harder to hit, but it didn't really seem to affect the rolls much. I don't think anybody missed because of the shimmer. They rolled low enough that it didn't matter, or they just missed outright. But they end up taking out the guy in the middle. Voskandor moves around to take, so they got two pinning the guy against the wall. And he got a special on Arestra that ended up amputating her arm. That must have been a critical. in order to do that much damage. Ends up amputating her arm, so she drops her shield and arm, and she goes down. She misses her Constitution roll, and at that point, the party had come up down the hallway before. A couple of them make some listen rolls, hear something going on down at the end. So they come out in the hallway, they turn down. So they're all in the back in the tower, kind of watching what's going on, looking for an opening to go on in. In fact, when Restra goes down, there's a thought of, hey, get one of the trolls in there. There's a whole discussion on, does everybody know that Voskandor has Berserker Rage on? And I remember, when you cast rune magic, it's obvious. There's effects. But Restra found the rule book where it says, the entire time it's obvious that there's a rune spell going off, which does make some sense. So we kind of, okay, he's got these huge horns coming out of his head, his eyes are blazing, that kind of thing. And they have seen him in Berserker Rage before, so they know that it's not going to wear off until the spell wears off, unless he can make these special rolls, right? And so there's, okay, we need to get out of the way so he doesn't come and start killing all of us. So they drag Restra down the hallway. She bleeds one round, but then they do first aid to stop healing. There's some discussion about first aid on stopping healing and keep them from dying, and the fact that those are two different effects that can come from the damage location matrix table. So yeah, you could have an abdomen or a chest wound or a head wound that is severe enough that you have bleeding every round. Although I have also added that to amputating limbs or mangling limbs as well. So you could be doing that when you're just bleeding out, and then you could subsequently take damage severe enough that, okay, you're going to die in 10 rounds. It doesn't say anything about bleeding, it's just you're going to die in 10 rounds. And so those are two different effects from the damage location table. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on out there. And so there's some discussion, okay, because trying to be believable and limiting duplicating effects. What can first aid do? What does it take a heal 2 to do? Well, first aid can stop bleeding, a heal 2 can stop bleeding. That's just the way things are, right? First aid can stop someone from dying. I don't know how much magic it would take to stop someone from dying. In this discussion right now, I'm making with you, I would say 2 points, but that's just me. And there's also this very quick discussion on a heal 6 being used to reattach or unmangle a limb. And my interpretation right now is that if you use a heal 6 to attach the limb is now attached, right? But you're not healing 6 points of damage to it as well. The 6-point healing is used to attach the limb. That's what the effect is, attach the limb, not heal 6 points and attach the limb. So there was some discussion, especially at the end, on, okay, we need to let's research this stuff a little bit so we can come to a consensus on what things mean. But they used a Cure Wounds common rune spell, 6 magic points, attached to the limb. That was, we had Angrelar do that. Angrelar's player wasn't able to make it. Did I mention this earlier? I had 2 players that couldn't make it. And then one of my players had a meeting, so we ended up pushing the start time back an hour and a half. So it was kind of a short session, short for us. And we need to research this, berserker effects after there's nobody left, and heal 2 and heal 6 kind of stuff, and there was some more discussion on the first aid stuff, because one player's thinking, we're down here, we're running out of magic points, so we need to stop using magic to heal when we can. So there's that whole sideline of stuff going on. But they pull her back, they do first aid to stop the bleeding. Excuse me, my goodness. They do the heal 6 to attach the limb. And Voskandor, throughout this entire fight, even with double hit points in his hit, almost double hit points in his hit locations, he's lost an arm a couple times. I had forgotten that two of these guys have got rune magic that can be used to attack with, and the last guy, when I realized, oh shoot, they've got this rune spell. What does it do? Check it out. Okay, so it bypasses all armor, so it makes a hit almost a critical. Good to go. Let's do that. Yeah, it bypasses shields too. Didn't think about that. But anyway, so oh, and Voskendor, he's got 21 strength, and I had this rule on rolling up because we were rolling up characters, and I allow what I call an extended roll. If you roll an 18, roll another d6, and if it's a 6, it becomes a 19. You get to roll a d6. If it's a 6, it's a 20. That kind of thing going on. And I also give my players, in addition to the 3 rune points they get at start, I give them 3 characteristic points. And he threw that into his strength and constitution. So he's got like a 21 strength and a 20 constitution. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I've changed that because we had Lars. Lars ended up being killed or dying. Yeah, no one got killed. And so with his new character, I have essentially a stat array. You get so many 6s, so many 5s, so many 4s, so many 3s, and so many 2s. Put them where you want them for your dice, that kind of thing. I pulled that from the 5e stat array thing. Figured out some kind of basic correlation and then changed them all into just dice instead of actual numbers. So we'll avoid those kinds of numbers in the future. But despite all of those hit points, he had limbs going down. But he's got this 21 strength. He's using a great axe. Okay, can you use a great axe one-handed? Believably, probably not. But he's got a 21 strength. That's 10 points over what's required to use the thing. And I steal a lot of rules from the fantasy trip. I can use some of my own house rules. And one of my house rules is if you've got a strength of 10 over what's required for the weapon, then you can use it one-handed. Will that actually be in a rule somewhere now that I think about it? But anyway, so okay, 21 strength, 11, okay, yeah, I can use it one-handed, but there's an effect because you don't have all that torque and stuff and that kind of thing. Just cut the damage in half. Because a fancy trip, there's other things about increasing damage. Anyway, so instead of doing 2d6 plus 2 with the great axe, he's doing 1d6 plus 1. He's only using one-handed. It's all awkward and that kind of thing, right? So even at that, he's able to do a couple points here and there. Some specials, that kind of thing. That actually saved the NPCs a couple times because the special with 1d6 plus 1 is much different than a special with 2d6 plus 2. But eventually he takes him out, and that's where we ended the session. So we've got Voskendor and Berserker Rage, no bad guys, the party hiding down the hallway, healing the Rustra. Happy gaming.